to Sports Scope, the most influential sports talk show in the nation.
What is today, the 19th?
Stay tuned for updates and great sports content.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Sports Scope. I'm your host, Robert Butler. On this, we're at the last day of January. One radio host said January is like a month of Mondays. You know, Bernie McGuirk from WABC's Bernie and Sid show. God rest his soul. Funny guy. Got a great show for you on tonight here, folks. Jets. Man, there's a story out in The Athletic today. There are 30 sources, according to Diana Rossini. It's a mess up there, you know. I'll give you my take on what I think they should do. It's worse than we thought. Also, Mike Macdonald. Man, this guy's young. 36. I didn't know he was 36. I thought he was more like a 45, 46. He's hired as a new Seattle Seahawks coach. Seahawks go defensive after firing a defensive guy. So he must have killed it in the interview. We'll talk about his hiring also. And the drama continues with the Tennessee and the NCAA. Now the Attorney General of Tennessee and the state of Virginia have filed a lawsuit against the NCAA. You know, I'm reading over this. I'm thinking, man, you know what? They may have a point there. Also, we're going to talk about great game on last Saturday. You know, first Saturday without football, no NFL, no college last Saturday. And, you know, I'll tell you what, I'll talk about that Lakers-Warriors game. I know that they're way down in the standings, but, you know, still some superstars there. Give you my take on that as well. But first, let's go ahead and take our first and only break. I'll be back here in 49 seconds. We'll hit the ground running here on Sports Scope. Hello, Sports Scope followers. The program has seen tremendous growth since going 5 days a week. I just wanted to thank everybody for your cash contributions and sharing the program with friends and families. Just a reminder, if you want to contribute to the program, go to the Cash App, the cash sign, and Sports Scope. There are other ways to contribute to the program listed at the bottom of the screen. If you want to advertise on the program, go to Sports, that is Sports with an S, another S, Scope, SKOPE, at gmail.com, just like it's listed at the bottom of the screen. Thank you and enjoy the program. Alrighty then, the way I don't know who would say that. Jim Carrey will say Ace Ventura. Okay, now is it Mike Macdonald? Is that his name? Yeah, Mike Macdonald hired today. He's got Jared Mayo beat, 36-year-old head coach for the Seattle Seahawks here. They make it official later on. Actually, later on today, I read about it early this afternoon. The CSPN says, you know, Macdonald becomes the NFL's youngest head coach and brings Seattle to a reputation as one of the league's top defensive mind that had led the Ravens to number one points allowed, sacks, takeaways in 2023. And like I said yesterday, or it may have been Monday, bragging on Macdonald's defense in the second half. They shut out Kansas City and Patrick Mahomes in the second half. That's why I think, you know, they were still in that game. The Ravens stood to stay with the running game. The outcome may have simply been different there. A little bit more information here. I took that from ESPN. This from The Athletic here. Guy's only been in coaching 9 years. Left the University of Georgia, joined Baltimore as an intern in 2014. Boy, I wish I would have thought of that when I graduated at 25 at Austin Peay. Just 9 years later, he's got a 6-year deal. My guess is it's $5 to $6 million a year. He's a first-time head coach. Hadn't even been a defensive coordinator before going on staff with John Harbaugh's and his brother He was a coordinator with Michigan in 2021. He spent 1 year with the Wolverines before taking the same position with the Ravens, But then it talks about Pete Carroll. 72-year-old Pete Carroll, he had been there for 14 years. Seahawks finished 9-8, same record they had in 22, except last year they didn't make the playoffs. Back in 22, they did, only to get put out in the first round by the 49ers here. Got a flood of young players. Devin Witherspoon is one to be on the defensive side of the ball. Is one, the cornerback they got early in the first round this past year. Who was it? Leonard Williams with the Giants. They picked him up in a trade there. But yeah, the defense was pretty much subpar towards the end of the season there. Pete being a defensive-minded head coach there. But listen, folks, I wrote some notes about this whole situation. And as you know, typically this is the second one. So there's life for defensive-minded head coaches here. Jared Mayo, that was more of a grandfather type of situation because it was in Belichick's contract that when he left, Mayo was going to get coach. And of course, Kraft signed off on it. He probably could have went through some legal mumbo jumbo and paid some maybe paid some kind of fee or something or negotiated out of that deal. But he didn't. He went on and okayed that and brought in Mayo. But this issue, you keep Pete Carroll on as advisor. My guess is they'll probably just let him work out his contract. John Snyder, the general manager there with Pete Carroll. But they turn around and hire a defensive-minded head coach that's half the age of the former defensive-minded head coach. Typically, teams go the opposite. Atlanta went with Morris there. Was it Raheem Morris out of brought him in? He's a defensive guy. Fired Arthur Smith, an offensive guy. Titans fired Mike Vrabel. Brought in Brian Callahan here from the Bengals here. Just usually that's what teams do. They just go the opposite of typically of the coach that was hired in. But, I thought this guy was 45, 45, 40. He's 36 years old. And I read that they interviewed Eric Bieniemy, which, Jason Whitlock saying the guy's just, he hears he's just not a good interview. That's the offensive coordinator with Sam Howell there with the Commanders. Got off to a great start. Started fading. Remember, they actually benched him and put in one of the backups there in Washington. That didn't work. Of course, they went on and fired Rivera. But they interviewed him and Frank Smith. Now, initially, I would have probably leaned on Frank Smith. That's the offensive coordinator from Miami. Go ahead and put some new flavor in here. You've got 3 more than reliable receivers. And one's obviously just a second-year guy. But you could see the talent in Jason Smith-Njigba, first-round pick out of Ohio State. DK Metcalf, a total beast mode. And, of course, Tyler Lockett there with those 2 young running backs there, Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker. They got a lot of skilled perimeter players on both sides of the ball. So there's a lot Seattle can work with. They just don't got the quarterback, Geno Smith, And for John Snyder, the general manager, to pass up a Bieniemy, to pass up a Frank Smith at Miami, he had to be blown away by this guy in the interview process. And for him to be so young, the only one I could think of was Mike Tomlin. The only other comparison, who's a young coordinator out of Minnesota when he was hired, Mike Tomlin was hired. I forgot about this. With the Steelers back in 2007. And you folks will not believe how young he was. He wasn't even 35. He was 34. And that was really unheard of. We're talking 15. we're now 17 years. Woo, time flies. 17 years ago, 34-year-old defensive coordinator out of Minnesota, connected through Tony Dungy, I want to say. And he just knocked it out of the park. So my guess is for Mike Macdonald, think about it. Todd Monken had been doing good the whole year. Todd Monken, their offensive coordinator, got Georgia the national championship with a walk-on quarterback, Stetson Bennett. Really developed the passing game there with Lamar Jackson. I know he had an awful game plan in this AFC Championship game, but look, Jonathan, whatever his name is, the DC for Arizona for the Cardinals, or the head coach for the Cardinals was the coordinator for Philadelphia. He was a defense coordinator for Philadelphia. They couldn't get a stop in the Super Bowl, and Arizona hired him anyways, and he didn't look that bad. He had a pretty good staff around. A lot of it is your staff. He didn't look that bad last year, considering what they had. They traded away a lot of people. J.J. Watt retired, and Kyler Murray didn't look too bad towards the end there. They actually beat that Eagle team, if you recall. But I guess, this guy must have knocked it out of the park. He must have knocked it totally out of the park, like a Mike Tomlin did. That was right when the Rooney Rule first started. This was about 4 years into the Rooney Rule, where you had to interview a minority. And then, of course, they did. Mike Tomlin said he had just a better, and there was some much older, much more qualified candidates when Tomlin interviewed at the time, but the Steelers just liked his vision. He went on to win a Super Bowl with Ben, and now, of course, he looks like a guy that maybe the game, maybe he needs to take a step back here, to take a step forward. But, to hire this guy over a Todd Monken, who's with the same team at 57, and you've got a guy 42, 43 here with the Frank, I think that's his name. Yeah, Frank Smith of Miami. Of course, Eric Bieniemy there, he out-interviewed both of those guys, and got this job here. If I'm Pete Carroll, I don't know, man. That feels like a little bit of age discrimination, You fire a defensive guy and bring in a defensive guy that's half your age, Carroll's 72. Mike Macdonald's only 36, Carlos. I don't know if you got a chance to hear that at the beginning of the program. Seattle's hired this guy. So my thought is, I wonder what John Snyder's thinking. Part of me thinks that he's looking at this as, we're stuck with Geno Smith a couple more years. This guy's going to put that Baltimore-style defense in to kind of hold a Kyle Shanahan in check. They played Kyle Shanahan's offense really well, okay? The Ravens did. But I don't know if the defense is quite as good as the Ravens. But those comparisons were being made. The Ravens, they held Sean McVay pretty much in check. They held Kyle Shanahan pretty much in check. They destroyed Miami, kept them pretty much in check as well. So there's a lot of thought in that. And Adam Schefter had a really good he had a list of players that they have here. And I thought, something, that is a good point, That is a really good point of not just Devin Witherspoon, but just quite a few. Okay, now he's saying that Jeff Haley, Boston College, Jeff Hafley is going to become a new defensive coordinator for the Packers. So, yeah, something. There's some good coaches in college, folks. They are some good coaches here at the college game here. Yeah, this is what Schefter says. The young talented on the Seahawks. Devin Witherspoon's only 23. Okay, Derek Hall's 22. Nasawoog's 27. Draymond Jones 27. Derek Hall 22. Mafi 25. Tariq Woolen, I think that's the other corner. I mean, these guys are all 24. He's trying to say that this could be, what would they call that group? I forgot what they called them now. The 12th man is the defense there. But, I guess he's saying that this could be like the same group that they had back in 2010, But we'll see. We'll see. Yeah, Leonard Williams, Bobby Wagner, Noah Fant. So, yeah, he's also saying that they got some free agents as well. So, that's probably, I guess that's the idea. I would have went with the offensive guy and went out and got me a quarterback. But, hey, that's Seattle. They've always had weird hires up there. Pete Carroll. Remember, he was a washout with the Jets as a pro coach. He was successful with USC. He was a questionable hire. Some think, well, he may be okay. We'll see. And, of course, all of his good recruiting skills at USC helped him in the draft, helped him in the draft there and helped him obviously win. I mean, of course, they got Russell Wilson, too. Here's the thing. Maybe they should bring back Russell Wilson. Pete Carroll's out. He's an advisor role. That's just something. They like the guy. He's pretty cool around the office. Let's bring Pete Carroll in here. We don't really want to fire him. He's won us a Super Bowl. He had a winning record the last 2 seasons there. That's just until he gets another job offer. Maybe somebody will hire Carroll as a head coach next year, or maybe hire him as a coordinator, because it looks like he don't want to go away. He's still got his energy. But that being said, with the vibrance of this coach here, Seattle would not have to pay a lot for Russell Wilson. They can bring him back for practically nothing. Denver owes him a lot of money. They're probably I almost guarantee you they're going to cut him. He's not going to work with them out on the trade. He's familiar with the area. He's familiar with the division. Maybe bring him back. Think about it this way. Look at all the talent. They've got new receivers. They got new running backs. The defense has been upgraded. It wouldn't be a bad plan to bring him back. Now, I don't know what they would do with Geno Smith, trade him to another team, work out something with his contract. I don't know if he would do that. I doubt if he would take a back seat to Wilson at this point, but a Russell Wilson would not be back here. And Carlos says they had Mike Holmgren bring them back to relevance. Yeah. Mike Holmgren, they offered him too much. They brought in Mike Holmgren. He was not successful there at first. He was asked to either be fired, or step down as the general manager. This is not working, Mike. So Mike becomes the head coach again. He steps away from general manager. And what do you know what? They make it to the Super Bowl with Matt Hasselbeck. They make it, and I think it was Sean Alexander on that team. I don't think they had beast mode. But that goes to what I've been telling you all. You can't hire, and I'm going to talk about that Jet story here in a minute. You can't hire one guy to do everything. Don't let players pick your players. That's the dumbest thing. I'll talk about the Jets thing. Don't let your coach force you to give up on your scouts, ignore your scouts, or ignore your general manager who've been scouting players for several months, even a couple of years in some cases. Come January, when he's done coaching, say, no, I'm going to get the guys that I know, the coaches I know, Bill Belichick. I tell everybody about this. I think I mentioned this the other day. Bill Belichick was friends with Herm Edwards when he was at Arizona State. They drafted this N'Keal Harry guy over players like DK Metcalf, A.J. Brown, Debo, all players who earned second contracts. N'Keal Harry's bounced around the league. I mean, that's the kind of foolishness that Belichick was doing as a general manager. Okay. You don't want that. It didn't work with Holmgren. Now, this is a young guy. He knows better than ask to draft the players. He's not going to go up there and say, like a Bill Parcells, and say, well, if I got to do all this cooking, I got to buy the groceries. No, you can't buy the groceries. All right, Bill Parcells. We're hiring you to do the cooking. Okay. We're hiring you to work at this. If you want to start your own restaurant, go start your own restaurant. Okay. We have a set of standards and stuff and ingredients we want to put in this particular food here. Okay. Bill Parcells. So maybe that was the reasoning. I guess he was probably an energetic guy, probably knocked it dead, had a good vision and everything. And of course, his resume looked good. I would have went offensive. But hey, I thought Tomlin was going to be a disaster. And sure enough, he wasn't. Now, he inherited Ben Roethlisberger, a guy who had already won a Super Bowl. He inherited a great defense and a team that only had two other coaches at that time. Chuck Noll and Bill Cowher both had won Super Bowls. This is a little bit different situation. But this is a borderline playoff team. Again, they won 9 games last year. We all thought they would do better. And I guess I was saying, well, if he put this new high-end defense in there that really coached well against the NFC West last year, totally destroyed Seattle, by the way. Remember the Ravens, Carlos? They beat Seattle like nobody's business. They beat the crap out of all NFC teams, you know? So I'm going to rule out judgment. I wouldn't have made this hire, but I'm not ready to completely call Seattle a bunch of morons because of these examples that I gave you. The Mike Tomlin thing, you know? Sean McVay, Zach Taylor. I thought Sean McVay was going to be a disaster with the LA Rams because he was very young like this, being hired as an assistant from the Washington then Redskins, okay? And then I thought Zach Taylor kind of got, saved by a world-renowned, world-class talent when Joe Burrow, that helped him. But he's not turned out to be a disaster. Didn't do too bad when they had backups in there. So it all depends on his staff and what he puts around. Wasn't real sure about DeMeco Ryans. Turned out to be a really good coach so far. Of course, again, it always helps when you got a great quarterback. Stroud's turned out to be a hit so far. He looks to be a starting to make it. Okay. All righty then. Okay, now the Jets. Okay, there's a long story in the Athletics. Thank you, Athletic. You've been providing me plenty of content over the last few days here. Diana Rossini, she wrote a long story with 30 sources, Carlos. 30 sources inside the Jets organization. And a lot of this stuff we already knew. A lot of this stuff was the Jets, Robert Saleh, doing a bad job of covering up their lies. Okay. This thing where he says, I'm going to put down Zach Wilson for the year. He's not going to play anymore. And then they turn around and activate Zach Wilson towards the end. I guess because Boyle got hurt or whatever, or Boyle didn't do that good. Saleh, very like last year, not this past, the year before the Rodgers stuff. Basically, he's indecisive with Zach Wilson. Now, publicly, we know that he didn't criticize Zach Wilson. Privately, he says, hey, listen, we'll be lucky to win 7 games with this guy. He can't stand it. And I think Joe Douglas was forcing Zach Wilson on him. Okay. But, here's some of my notes here. Jets debacle. Donna Rossini wrote in Athletic, 30 sources inside the organization. As I expected, one source said Aaron Rodgers was the general manager to Joe Douglas, not the assistant. not the assistant general manager. And we already kind of knew that the way he's bringing in Alan Lazard and Randall Cobb. You cannot let players dictate or it didn't work in that. Think about it. We know it destroyed the Lakers. But when LeBron was, when he brought in, who was it? Westbrook. That was all LeBron. And at the time, Jordan wanted to bring in a whole lot of players. He wanted to bring in play. And then Jerry Krause said, no, man. No. We're going to have to move off Charles Oakley, But according to this, and when this story came out, there's some validity to this story. Because when this story came out, I made a note here that they have, what did they do here? They have parted ways. The Jets have parted ways with assistant general manager Rex Hogan. She also reported this. The Jets and Rex Hogan mutually agreed to parted ways. The move allows Hogan, who spent the last 5 seasons as the team's assistant general manager, which apparently, according to this story, this ain't in this tweet by this reporter, but that job's kind of went to Aaron Rodgers. Or some say that job's went to Joe Douglas, Carlos. Hogan's well-respected around the league. He will be sought after as a front office free agent. Hopefully the Titans, all you Nashvillians here, maybe Ryan Carthon will bring in another set of eyes to help him out. So soon as this story comes out, this guy just resigns. So it's a total reality show like we were afraid of up there with the New York Jets. Yeah. And Carlos says he's 15 of these sources. Well, a lot of this is what we already expected. I mean, when you're getting he made a list. And Carlos, yeah. Aaron Rodgers poo-pooed this list. And I like Bakhtiari. I like Randall. You can get these guys. It ain't going to be the end of the world. That's what he said publicly. Privately, he said, hey, look, man, these are the guys I want around here. But more about this story. It criticizes the offensive coordinator, Nathaniel Hackett, for poor work ethic issues with the whole offensive staff, last-minute meetings. Just a day or so before game day is what this story says. And I just think to myself, again, they're obviously going to bring back Saleh. Hackett's already been announced that they're going to bring back Nathaniel Hackett, okay? And the truth of the matter is, they're sitting there with that 10th pick, okay, coming up in April. They've got that 10th pick. And the truth of the matter is, they're not, listen, from what I'm reading about Saleh and Zach Wilson, that relationship shot. That ship has sailed. This kid has totally lost his. I know he had a good game there towards the end, but I don't think there'll be some trust issues from now till the end of time with him and Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson reminds me of the Baker Mayfield situation. Okay. Going back to his time with Kevin, whatever his name is, Stefanski, his run-ins with Stefanski and the staff there. All right. It got to the point of no return with Mayfield. They got tired of his antics. Okay. The same with Saleh. Saleh is done with. So what they'll have to do this year, even if you can get a 7th round pick for the guy, I would move off of Zach Wilson. All right. That ship is sailed. Go ahead and do that. And truth be told, I know you got offensive line issues. I do all that in free agency as much as I can. And they're not going to do all this. But I'm just telling you what I do. then I'd go out and get me a quarterback in that 10th pick. You know, if you got one of these really good quarterbacks, they don't have a second round pick. And if Rodgers don't like it, I'd move off him. Because that's what they're really going to have to do. What they really should have done after reading this story after The Athletic, Carlos, I'd have blown the whole thing up if I was Johnson. You know, I know you got some players on defense. You got Garrett Wilson. Who in the heck? And maybe, here's my problem. Maybe Woody Johnson orchestrated all this. We cannot get that, not even out of this story. Who orchestrated to give the whole world to Aaron Rodgers? To a 38-year-old quarterback. Who does that? You know? The Jets have such low self-esteem. And there is, you know something, I mean, Carlos says he's worse than Ryan. Well, Ryan Leaf claims he had drug problems, you know? Now, maybe it's not too far off from Ryan Leaf. But a lot of the criticism, according to these 30 sources, are on Nathaniel Hackett. He's not a good coordinator. This is a guy that Aaron Rodgers likes. Okay? How many people have hired Adam Gase? Remember Adam Gase? That's another, no offense, Jets fans. But Adam Gase was just the guy that Peyton Manning liked. He was a terrible head coach. I don't even know if he's a coordinator. And maybe he's one of those passing game coordinators or something like that, you know? But the truth of the matter is, with all that dissension, you know, they're saying Saleh is paranoid. He's making moves, trying to keep his job rather than trying to win and build momentum and build a foundation for the future and develop as plans changed. When he's this thing talks about Saleh still has a picture of Rodgers running through the tunnel with the American flag in his hand. You know, there's these coaches, and particularly a lot of the guys that were former players or particularly defensive coaches. I say former players, I throw in Dan Campbell. And a lot of these defensive coordinators are very emotional. The more offensive guys are more calm and cerebral, other than Jim Harbaugh. But Harbaugh got a good resume, though, you know. But you can't be overly emotional as a coach. You're supposed to be calm and keep them calm. But apparently, he's not calm. Saleh is, according to this story. All right? So Nathaniel Hackett's not a good offensive coordinator, according to this. He doesn't prepare right. Aaron Rodgers is calling the shots. That's a disaster in its own right. Your offensive line, a total disaster. Joe Douglas missed bad on Zach Wilson. He missed bad on who was it? The tackle that they supposedly been moving around all over the place. Okay, on the offensive tackle. Was it his idea to go to Rodgers and give him the moon? Or was this Woody Johnson, the owners, whose idea was it to give this guy all this authority? Okay, whose idea was it? You know, if you're going to get a guy like Rodgers, don't get him with a defensive-minded head coach. Now, listen, a lot of you watched, what was it, Hard Knocks. I watched Hard Knocks. I was sold on Saleh too. A lot of these coaches read the motivational stuff, Carlos. They get all hyped up on the motivation stuff. They get sold on the motivational stuff. But the truth of it is you have to have substance, okay? You have to have substance. And what did they do with their first-round pick last year? They, instead of going out and trying to get a tackle or somebody, no, they went out and got Will McDonald, pretty good edge rusher. That's a typical defensive-minded head coach type of move. They don't, and Tomlin's had this problem before. and the Steelers have. Most of their money is in their defense, okay, in an offensive-driven league. Now, that line is just now doing good. Just now. They got that tackle out of Georgia. But they would not spend the money on that like they would go out and make aggressive moves and get a Michael Fitzpatrick, or give T.J. Watt a fortune. So it's was that Joe Douglas's call? Was that Robert Saleh's call to get Will McDonald with that tackle? When you're banking on a 38-year-old Dwayne Brown who could not stay healthy the whole season, the patchwork offensive line, and they just wasn't doing nothing. According to this story, he wasn't meeting up when they were doing that mateship offensive line, according to this story. So now that everything is going to happen, nothing's going to happen right now. They're going to roll out. The Jets are going to roll out with Aaron Rodgers at pushing, what's he going to be, 39, 40 next year? They might they'll probably get a lineman this year because everybody's putting pressure on them to draft one. Tennessee's going to get one at 7. And maybe there'll be a guy left over. There's supposed to be a tackle from Alabama. They're usually not that good from Alabama. There's a guy from Oregon and Oregon State. They may do that. It's supposed to be deep when they probably should get a quarterback and go get a tackle otherwise, but they're not going to do that. They're not going to do that. My guess is that they're going to get this tackle. Rodgers going to get hurt again, and Woody Johnson will probably be forced to. He'll probably think, he'll probably have his come to Jesus moment, and then he'll fire everybody and start over. And that's probably what he should do. And Rodgers will move on. I don't know if he's going to have anything left on his contract at that point or not. They'll trade him, maybe negotiate a buyout. Maybe he retires after he gets the crap beat out of him next year. But maybe they can put something together after this has been the story's been out. Maybe they'll make some changes here. But Saleh was ticked off that the story about Zach Wilson not wanting to come back in and play under him got out. They had to talk him into it and all that. He's like, hey, who let that story out? He was mad, going crazy. But the Jets are a mess, and it's unfortunate. Carlos says Adam Gase is currently working as a high school coach in his hometown. That's fall from grace right there, isn't it? But he's still getting that NFL money, see. He was hired as a head coach in Miami. The Jets hired him, I want to say. And now Carlos says he's a head coach in his hometown there, probably making $40,000 a year. But he's got all that money from the NFL that he still let. Micaiah Becton, thank you. Yeah, that's the one that busted. So he missed on Zach Wilson. He missed on Becton. Maybe Wilson goes somewhere else and rejuvenates his career. Look at, I don't think that Tampa should give Baker Mayfield a big bunch of money. But from the way he played, maybe that was Morales or whatever the guy's name is that went over to Carolina. Maybe that was his coaching and not Baker Mayfield. But my thing is, Tampa will probably give Baker Mayfield some type of extension that I didn't think he'd be getting. I thought Mayfield would be lucky to be a backup at best in this league, But hey, man, he got in the right situation. He worked hard, and now they're probably going to give him an extension, brother. I think he will not. So it could happen with Wilson. It's not going to happen with the Jets. I don't know where the Jets will go. Maybe he'll be a backup somewhere for McVay or maybe he'll be a backup for this guy down here for the Titans or somebody, So it's and then maybe they sign Ryan Tannehill as a backup since they still have the same passing game. Todd Downing, I think is his name, coordinator up there with the Jets, but it's probably going to be a disaster. They can't rebuild that offensive line in 1 year. Yeah. And and Pickles, Carlos says he made about 20, 25 million. So yeah, he's going to live off that and go to high school and then maybe get called back up to the league per se. But the Jets, it doesn't look good for the Jets right now. You know, even though they should probably just totally do the opposite of what they're going to do. They're going to try to push it out there with Rodgers. And again, that's what some of these owners are about. You know, they're more about getting the back. And that's been the issue. That's been the criticism with the two Ets, the New York Mets and the New York Jets. That's been what the criticism I've read about them for 25 years now, that they're just trying to get the back page. And the Yankees and the Giants, other than here lately, the Yankees and the Giants, they get the front page. They feel like they're second-class citizens, Carlos, to the Yankees and the Giants. Because the Yankees and Giants have all won Super Bowls and World Series over the past few years. Jets ain't won since 68. Now the Mets won in 86. They did get there in 2000. But that's just kind of been the thing. Don't you think so, Carlos? Tampa was my dark horse. Yeah, Carlos said Tampa was his dark. And hey, they did better than I thought. I thought they'd be picking up there with Carolina, you know, picking one or two. So that's a good call, man. Good stuff there. Okay. Moving back here. Let's go back to this Tennessee story as the drama continues in college football land, folks. So the Jets are a mess. What else is new? You know, the Jets are a mess. The Mets are going to be a mess. But they'll make news for all the wrong reasons. Looking for love in all the wrong places. Woo! Made me think about that show, the Dave Chappelle show, when he was making fun of McDonald's, you know. There was a cheesy commercial about McDonald's giving jobs in the black community and stuff, and Chappelle made fun of it and did a skit off of it, calling it Whack Arnold, you know, and that little cheesy commercial that came out in the 90s, you know, and it says one thing. This guy, he's making fun of Chappelle, who's dressed up like the guy working for McDonald's, which is really, they called it Whack Arnold's, you know, and he's spelling like hamburgers. He's got his uniform on. He's walking home, you know, and one guy's like, what's up, Whack Arnold's? And the guy said, the leanest burger in the world is the meanest burger in the world. You know, thin line between love and hate. He said, there's a thin line between fries and shape. He said, man, I got to quit smoking weed. And they're making fun of it. Even the girls are like taking his hat and stuff. It's really funny. I love that show. Missed that show, man. And Carlos said it's a bunch of mumbo jumbo in the media junk. Okay, switching gears. Let's go back to this college football story. Talked about this yesterday. Now the drama continues, okay? Tennessee and Virginia attorney generals. The attorney general for Tennessee and the attorney general for the state of Virginia have all filed suit against the NCAA. Now, I got to go back and look at my notes here. Basically, Tennessee and Virginia are seeking a temporary restraining order after barring the NCAA from enforcing its NIL recruiting ban or taking any other action to prevent prospective college athletes and transfer candidates from engaging in meaningful NIL discussions prior to enrollment. It It says the headline here, and this is Athletics been on the ball this week, folks. Tennessee, Virginia AG file lawsuit against NCAA over restrictions on NIL recruiting. As I read this story, folks, the suit comes after news broke Tuesday that NCAA was investigating university, and this Sprite scored a collective unofficially associated with University of Tennessee. I guess that's the NIL company. And its activity recruiting with, of course, I mentioned that, this Nico guy. This is what the Attorney General for Tennessee says. Not the university. The student athletes are entitled to rules that are clear and the rules that are fair, said the Attorney General Jonathan Skrmetti. College sports wouldn't exist without college athletes, and those students shouldn't be left behind while everybody else involved prospects. The NCAA's restraints on prospect students' ability to meaningfully negotiate NIL deals violate federal antitrust law. Only Congress has the power to impose such limit. The suit pointed to the Supreme Court 9-0 decision against the NCAA back in 2021. So this is not a political thing. These Supreme Court justices, 3 of them were appointed by Democrats, 4, the other 6 were appointed by Republicans, and they all voted 9-0. That's very rare to get that in the Supreme Court. My thing is, the truth of the matter is, the NCAA, thinking about this stuff, I mentioned this a little bit yesterday, Carlos. The NCAA has had rules for years that violate federal law, okay? Name, image, and likeness. That should have been settled the second that NCAA football game came out and people were seeing their face on a cover. That no other walk of life that a video game could put mine or your face on there, sell it, and say that this other body that is opposite of the federal statute of United States antitrust laws, copyright, whatever, name, image, and likeness, and just say, well, because we've got this rule here, we can use your. I mean, that is such nonsense. The truth about NIL is NIL should have been allowed years and years ago. As soon as college football got on TV and radio and the explosion of this, that's the truth of it, whether the purists want to hear that or not. It's like those sovereign citizens, those crazy people you see on these cop reality shows where they says, well, they make up their own laws. See, no, these are the laws in the state of Florida or the state of Tennessee. The law you're coming up with is something you're coming up with. Okay, you have to, whether you want to or not, you have to abide by these laws, NCAA. You know, Clay Travis says he's got a legal background. He said this may be the end of the NCAA. You know, there'll still be college football there, but the governing body, this may be the whole end of that stuff. And the truth of the matter is, these AGs for 2 different, and Virginia ain't got nothing to do. There's no issue with Virginia Tech. I didn't read about anything with their universities. I just think their attorney general's thinking, okay, the NCAA's out of line here. They've been out of line. You know, what other walk of life can you not be told to make money? Well, okay, so if I got a scholarship for academics, okay, while I'm at blah, 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 Austin P or whatever, and I'm an actor and I get cast into a movie or something, that scholarship's not going to be stripped away. But if you're playing football and you get a offer to play in a commercial, before this, they can just take that scholarship. No, you violated this. You know, you can't, other walks of life, you can't have your scholarship stripped. So they've been not going by federal and state laws for years, because these are publicly funded institutions. Okay. Alabama. Now, of course, a lot of the money that's going to the athletes as not being that. So I think that these attorney generals, I think they got a point. You know, a lot of people didn't think that the Supreme Court would vote 9-0 3 years ago. Now I do admit, needs some guardrails. It's caused a headache for your big time coaches. I mean, Nick Saban's gone early because of this. Jay Wright, I mentioned, from Villanova in basketball, 62, had plenty, 10 years left. You know, he left early. Even the governor of the state of Tennessee said the University of Tennessee has nothing but forthcoming with the NCAA. And he says, I think Chancellor Donde Plowman, that's the lady I mentioned yesterday, for taking a stand on behalf for all universities and student athletes, not just the University of Tennessee. And I think they all have a good point the more I look into this stuff. So, hey, listen, it is what it is. And I got a feeling the NCAA is going to take another L at the end of the day, folks. I wanted to make a quick note. Speaking of laws and rules being put into place, switching gears to the round ball, like Jim Carrey said in Cable Guy. Best basketball game of the year against two old guys for sports wise. I'm ordering both of them. Saturday, Carlos, I don't know if you got a chance to watch that game. It was a lot better because I had a few dollars on it. But the Lakers and the Warriors, 145 to 144, double overtime national televised game with LeBron James and his gray beard. And of course, Steph Curry, 35, 36-year-old Steph Curry there. Best game all double overtime, 145, 144. That's why the league is coming down on load management, and especially for these nationally televised games. I wouldn't have watched that game if it didn't have LeBron or Steph Curry in there. So I made that point, and at the last minute, and I'm sure the league looked into this, Carlos, at the last minute at 4:30 Central, 5:30 Eastern, they had a big triple header, ABC did. We were supposed to see, which we didn't, we were supposed to see Joel Embiid in the rematch with the Joker, with Denver last Saturday. And, of course, at the last minute, go figure, Joel Embiid scratches. So he Embiid puts up 70-something points a few games ago. And also last week, 10 days ago. Then last week, Joel Embiid beats the Joker head up. So this was in Philadelphia. But at the last minute, the 76ers, he scratched, and so did Maxey. And, of course, Denver went on to win. They didn't cover the spread. But that just goes, I didn't even watch the game hardly. I was just fast-forwarding to it. I was hoping Denver would have won by 8 because I had him minus 7.5 that day. I was bored. It's the first Saturday without football. No NFL was on last Saturday. So it's you got a lot of these players. Now, Embiid's out again. He's had some kind of knee injury that happened last night. That's like you said, Carlos. That's been my criticism. Yeah, okay, he got the best of Joker. But Joker's healthy in the playoffs, okay? He's got to stay healthy. Part of my rant is you can't take him serious. He's been injured since his Kansas days. He was there for a cup of coffee with 1 year. But also, that's why the league can and should be. I'm glad that they have come down on this load management thing, especially for these nationally televised games. Nobody wants to watch the backups in the big televised games. Hey, listen, you want to get paid for 82 games? play 82 games. And of course, these sites that want to hug up and give all these players some slack said Jordan only played 82 games one time in his career. Yeah, but how many did he play? 79. How many did he play in the 70s? Quite a few. Quite a few. John Stockton, 17 years. Yeah, LeBron played a long time. Still playing at a pretty high level. He's into that hyperbaric chamber and all that stuff too. But I do think if you want to spread this thing out and put the finals in July, I think that'd be good for ratings anyways. You wouldn't be competing with nobody. What are you going to compete with? The British Open in golf? But I do think the players need to play all the games, okay? Load management is nonsense. And like I said, I'm sure they got a good rating on Saturday night. I mean, I know these are two teams that are in the playing, but for one night, they were good to go. Remember, LeBron did win that in-season tournament because it was one and done. He's older. He can't withhold a 7-game series against a formidable opponent. That was proven when they got swept in the Denver series. You know, yeah. Carlos says going back to NCAA uses third-party companies to run that. Yeah. And now I really hope that Tennessee kicks their butt. You know. Because for a chancellor, going back to that story, for a chancellor to come out and say what she said, that means Tennessee, this is not a coach, a knucklehead coach. This is somebody who's talked to their legal team, who's dotted their I's and crossed their T's, and still getting a lot of flack because of a complaint by a competitor, I'm sure, saying there was illegal violations from the recruitment of this 5-star player. My guess is she dotted her I's and crossed her T's. These issues with NIL before the case has started, correct, but the universities wanted to make the extra money. Well, I think Tennessee's in good standing. Could be wrong, but I didn't think that I wasn't really sure that the Supreme Court was going to rule the way they did back in 21 either. And they ruled 9-0, cross party lines. They ruled 9-0. And the NCAA, quite frankly, I've been watching a lot of this. They've been taking a lot of L's here lately. They made that kid eligible for North Carolina that we didn't think that was going to be eligible because of pressure. So their power structure is kind of crumbling down. I wouldn't be standing under their power structure. I may get a brick on my head or something like that, you know. So that's all I got for tonight, folks. If you like the show, share the show. I'm right at the end point here at 58 minutes. I'm trying to get my good friend Sanja from the Mac and Jack show. I had to contact Mac, and I don't have her contact because it was on my Facebook, and Facebook has suspended me for I think a month or whatever. Trying to get her. She's a big Carolina Panthers fan. She's out of Atlanta. Get her thoughts on the NFC South and the hire of the new head coach of the Carolina Panthers and interview her. May try to get her on sometime next week, folks, and talk about that. I know that I'll have Jeffrey Descovich on next week, and he's going to talk about the Sports Illustrated article that he got published a few years ago. Get him to come on and all that stuff. So anyways, folks, I appreciate you. Good show tonight, Carlos. Good crowd tonight. Otherwise, I'll see you all tomorrow, same time, same place, here on Sports Scope.